Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. Chapter 25. It started small. It began with the little things. Fourth didn't lean in for his usual morning forehead kiss when Gemini handed him his coffee. He didn't grumble when Gemini called him baby strawberry in the hallway, just gave a faint smile and turned back to his laptop. He didn't steal Gemini's phone to change the wallpaper or ask to be fed snacks during his study breaks. He didn't even tease him when Gemini accidentally burnt the toast one morning. At first, Gemini brushed it off. Maybe Fourth was tired. Finals were coming up, after all. Or maybe he was just trying to focus. But by the third day, Gemini could tell something was wrong. It wasn't distance. It was softness, too soft, too polite. Like Fourth was quietly folding himself away. On Wednesday afternoon, Gemini walked into the bedroom and saw Fourth sitting by the window, laptop open, headphones on, completely absorbed in his work. His lips were pressed into a thin line, his brow furrowed in focus. "Hey," Gemini said gently, placing a bottle of juice on the desk. "You haven't eaten yet?" Fourth hummed without looking up. "I'm fine." Gemini tilted his head. "You've been acting different lately." Fourth didn't react. No teasing comeback, no sigh of irritation. Just a soft, tired smile. "No, I haven't." "Yes, you have," Gemini insisted as he sat beside him. "You haven't kissed me in 2 days." Fourth blinked. "What?" "You always do," Gemini said softly. "You always run up to me when I get home. You even used to complain when I used too much conditioner. Now, nothing." Fourth looked down at his lap. "I'm just busy." "No," Gemini said quietly, touching his wrist. "You're pulling away." Silence. Gemini's chest tightened. "I did something, didn't I?" he asked, voice low. "Did I upset you?" Fourth shook his head. "You didn't do anything." "Then why?" Gemini's voice cracked slightly. "Why does it feel like you're slipping away from me?" Fourth bit his lip, his shoulders shrinking as if his thoughts were too heavy to carry. "I just need some space," he finally said. The words hit harder than Gemini expected. "Space?" he repeated softly. Fourth nodded, eyes lowering. "Not from you. Just space to breathe. I don't know what's wrong, but I need to figure it out." Gemini stayed quiet. He wanted to reach out, to pull Fourth close until the distance disappeared. But the look in Fourth's eyes told him that pushing now would only make things worse. So, he stood up, forcing a small, steady smile. "Okay," he said gently. "Take all the space you need. I'll be right here when you're ready." And with that, Gemini walked to the door. He left quietly, the sound of his footsteps fading down the hall, his heart twisting with uncertainty, unsure if giving space meant holding on with love, or slowly letting go of the one person he couldn't imagine life without. Chapter 26. The silence had stretched for days now. At first, Gemini thought it was just post-semester burnout. Fourth had been quieter, more withdrawn, but not cold. Just dimmer somehow. The brightness in his voice, the spark in his eyes when they'd share secret smiles in the quiet corners of campus, the soft laughter whenever Gemini whispered, "My husband," under his breath, all of it was fading slowly, like the tide pulling away from shore. Gemini noticed. Of course he did. Every subtle pullback from a touch, every hesitant smile, every quiet sigh. "Is everything okay?" he had asked once during lunch, setting down Fourth's favorite dish. Fourth only nodded with a faint smile. "Just tired." Gemini didn't believe him. But he didn't push. Then came the breaking point. That afternoon, he ran into Elisa outside the faculty lounge. She was cheerful, scrolling through her phone and showing him car options on an app. "He likes blue, right?" she asked, referring to Fourth, whom she only knew through hints. "This one's nice, and the back seat's spacious if you two ever." Gemini laughed and nudged her shoulder lightly. "You're impossible." And that was when Fourth turned the corner. His eyes met Gemini's, then flickered toward Elisa. She was standing too close. She was elegant, confident, and mature. Everything Fourth hadn't been feeling like lately. Gemini's polite smile, innocent as it was, became the final crack. He didn't realize it then, but something fragile had broken in Fourth at that moment. That evening, as the sun dipped and the campus emptied, Gemini texted, "Day's done. Want me to pick you up?" No reply. "I'm bringing food. Tell me what you want." Still nothing. He called twice. No answer. Unease crept in cold and sharp. Gemini made his way to Pond and Fuen's classroom under the pretense of checking on a project submission. "Where's Natawat?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Pond blinked. "He left early. Said he wasn't feeling well." Fuen frowned, glancing at Pond. "He hasn't texted either." Gemini didn't reply. He was already moving, heart pounding, as he rushed to the parking lot. When he unlocked their apartment, the lights were off. The silence felt heavy. "Fourth?" he called softly. No answer. He stepped into their bedroom and froze. Fourth was curled up on the bed, still in his university clothes, the blanket half draped over him. The room was dim, the air still. "Hey," Gemini whispered, setting his bag down as he hurried to the bedside. "What's wrong?" Fourth didn't respond. "You didn't reply. You left early. I was worried." Still nothing. "I've been calling you. Why don't you ask your ex instead?" Fourth's voice was low and bitter, slicing through the quiet. Gemini blinked, startled. "What?" "Elisa," Fourth said, still staring out the window. "Everyone says she's your ex. She's smart, beautiful, mature. Someone who actually fits with you. Unlike me." Gemini stood there, stunned. "You think I saw you today," Fourth continued, his voice trembling. "Smiling at her. Standing close. You don't even smile at me like that in public anymore." "That's not true," Gemini said, voice breaking. "We just can't do that at the university." Fourth looked down. "Maybe I was the only one who thought we were okay. You've been distant, distracted. Do you still want me, Gemini? Or was I just a mistake? A student you regret marrying?" Gemini's heart twisted. "You think I regret marrying you?" Fourth wiped his eyes quickly, embarrassed. "You don't have to pretend." "I'm not pretending," Gemini said, voice tight. "You really think I'd cheat on you? Leave you for someone I barely talk to anymore?" Fourth's lips trembled. "Everyone says otherwise. Then what is she to you?" "Elisa?" Gemini sighed, trying to steady his tone. "She's just a friend. One of the few I had when I first joined the faculty. People made rumors, yes, but we never dated. She went abroad for research and now she's married. She was helping me look for something." Fourth looked uncertain. Gemini knelt in front of the bed, his voice gentler now. "She was helping me find a car for you." Fourth blinked, confused. "I wanted to buy you a graduation gift," Gemini explained, handing him his phone. The messages showed Elisa sending car pictures, writing, "I think he'll love this one. It's small and cute like him," followed by, "Is the surprise still a secret?" "I won't tell." Fourth's eyes widened slightly. "You were doing that for me?" Gemini nodded. "I wanted it to be special. You've worked so hard. I just wanted to make you happy." Fourth's voice softened, cracking. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." Gemini cupped his cheek. "Hey, you think I don't love you? You're my world. Do you know how much I wait every day just to come home and see you? You've changed me more than you realize. I can't even imagine a day without you." Fourth broke into quiet sobs. "I was scared," he whispered. "I know," Gemini said, wrapping him in a tight embrace. "But next time, talk to me. I can handle anything, except your silence." "I thought I was losing you," Fourth murmured. "You'd have to chase me away first," Gemini said softly, smiling through the ache. "And even then, I'd probably find my way back just to annoy you." That earned a faint giggle from Fourth. Gemini smiled and brushed away his tears. "There's my smile. Can I kiss you now?" Fourth nodded, cheeks still wet. Gemini leaned in and kissed him, gentle, forgiving, full of love. It wasn't desperate. It was steady and real. When they pulled away, Fourth mumbled against his shoulder. You're still annoying. And you're still dramatic, Gemini teased. Fourth smiled faintly. But I love you. Gemini's arms tightened around him. I love you more than I can ever say. They stayed that way for a while, wrapped in quiet warmth, the kind that follows after a storm. And just like that, their love began to heal again. Imperfect, sometimes fragile, but always real. Always theirs. Chapter 27. Gemini took the day off. No lectures. No meetings. No emails. No phone calls. Just one mission. To make his husband smile again. Nothing haunted him more than the sound of Fourth crying in his arms the night before. It had been a misunderstanding, yes, but Gemini still blamed himself. If only he had noticed the signs earlier. If he had held him tighter, listened more carefully, reminded him every day that he was the only one Gemini ever wanted, perhaps Fourth wouldn't have felt so alone. So today, Gemini decided to make things right. He woke up early and turned toward the bundle of blankets beside him. Fourth was still asleep, cheeks soft against the pillow, hair tousled and lips slightly parted. He looked peaceful, fragile, and precious all at once. Gemini smiled. Then, leaning down, he pressed a gentle kiss on Fourth's nose. Gem. Fourth murmured, half asleep, turning away. Gemini kissed his forehead. Wake up, my prince. Fourth opened one sleepy eye. You're being weird. I'm making up for being foolish, Gemini said with a small grin, pulling the blanket off gently. Fourth blinked. You're not going to the university? No, Gemini replied softly. I made my husband cry. So today, I'm going to make him smile again. Fourth hid his face in the pillow. That husband is dramatic. That husband, Gemini whispered, is the love of my life. Breakfast came first, served right in bed. Fresh strawberries, honey toast, perfectly cooked eggs, and iced coffee just the way Fourth liked it. Everything placed neatly on a tray with a small card that read, To my dearest husband, today, you do nothing but smile. I'll take care of the rest. Fourth blushed so hard he hid behind a pillow. Stop it, he said, voice muffled. You're being too much. Romantic. Gemini teased, feeding him a strawberry. But you deserve it. They laughed and shared bites, the room filled with light conversation and quiet affection. Gemini would occasionally brush crumbs from Fourth's lips or sneak quick pecks on his cheek just to see him blush again. After breakfast, Gemini led him to the bathroom. Steam rose from the warm water already running in the tub. You even ran a bath? Fourth asked, eyes wide in disbelief. Peach-scented, Gemini said proudly. Because it's your favorite. Fourth smiled faintly. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to, Gemini replied, gently helping him in. You deserve to feel at peace again. He sat beside the tub, sleeves rolled up, carefully pouring warm water over Fourth's shoulders. It wasn't about grand gestures, it was about presence. You're too good to me, Fourth whispered, eyes closed. Gemini chuckled softly. Only because you're the best thing that ever happened to me. From now on, we talk about everything, okay? No more silence. No more guessing. Fourth nodded. I promise. Later, after getting dressed, they went for a long drive. The sky stretched wide in soft pastels. Music played quietly in the background, and the air smelled faintly of vanilla. Fourth sat with one leg tucked under him, occasionally glancing at Gemini and smiling, as though still amazed that someone could love him this much. They passed rice fields, distant mountains, and winding roads lined with trees. Every so often, Gemini would reach for Fourth's hand and squeeze it gently. I don't say it enough, Gemini murmured. You say it every day, Fourth replied with a small smile. Then I'll say it again, Gemini said, eyes on the road. I love you. Fourth leaned over and kissed his cheek. I love you too. By the time the sun began to set, the sky was painted with gold and rose. Gemini parked by a quiet stretch of road surrounded by tall grass. The air was still, warm, and peaceful. Fourth turned to him, eyes shining softly. You keep looking at me like I'm the only person in the world. Gemini smiled. That's because you are. Fourth laughed, that familiar sound that Gemini had missed so much. And in that moment, Gemini reached over, pulling him into a gentle hug. Fourth leaned in easily, resting his head against Gemini's chest. The world outside faded away, leaving only the steady beat of their hearts and the quiet promise between them. "I'm really happy," Fourth whispered. Gemini pressed a kiss to his hair. "Then my mission is complete." They stayed like that, wrapped in each other's warmth, as the sun disappeared behind the trees. The world moved on, but for them, time stood still. It wasn't a perfect day, but it was theirs. Soft, healing, and full of love. And when Fourth finally smiled, bright, genuine, and full of light, Gemini knew that every moment, every effort, had been worth it. Chapter 28. Final exams came with all the pressure Fourth expected, and more. Piles of books, highlighted notes, half-empty coffee cups, sleepless nights, and an emotionally drained pout that Gemini had come to expect every exam season. But this time was different, because now, Fourth had a husband who hovered around him like a mother hen in a silk robe. Gemini brought him fresh orange juice and snacks every 2 hours, sat across from him on their floor mattress turn study station, massaged his shoulders between subjects, and even quizzed him seriously. But the most important part? "I told you," Fourth said on the first night of their revision marathon, eyes serious as he tapped a finger on Gemini's lips. "Every right answer earns me a kiss. That's the deal." Gemini blinked. "And wrong answers?" "You still kiss me," Fourth shrugged. "But maybe pout first." Gemini laughed. "You're such a spoiled brat." "You're spoiled brat," Fourth replied with a smile. He was. And Gemini adored every moment of it. Day after day, Gemini watched him study, face scrunched in focus, hair tied up messily, wearing Gemini's oversized hoodie with bare legs peeking out. He looked both exhausted and beautiful, buried in formulas and equations. Gemini sat across from him with a whiteboard and markers, quizzing him like a dedicated tutor. "Okay, last one. If the interest rate increases by 1.25% quarterly on a principal of 2. Kiss," Fourth interrupted, reaching across to grab Gemini's collar and pulling him in for a quick kiss. "Answers 1077.98 baht. Now, one more for luck." Gemini groaned playfully. "You're too distracting. No wonder I can't focus when you sit in my class." "Then fail me with your kisses," Fourth teased. And Gemini gave him one, then another, until Fourth giggled that he'd forget every formula at this rate. Finally, the last paper came and went. When Fourth stepped out of the exam hall, he slumped with relief and ran straight into Gemini's arms. Gemini, who had conveniently parked a little too close to campus, caught him with a grin. "You're done," Gemini murmured, hugging him tightly. "I'm so proud of you, baby." "I'm brain dead," Fourth mumbled against his chest. "But I deserve food. Fancy food. So expensive it makes you cry." "Your wish," Gemini said, "is my credit card's command." That evening, they went home with expensive sushi, cake, and takeaway hot pot. Fourth fell asleep halfway through the movie, still chewing, his head resting on Gemini's shoulder. Gemini smiled, carried him to bed, and tucked him in gently. But there was one thing Fourth hadn't told him yet. He'd applied for an internship at his father's company. He wanted to do it quietly, based on his own merit. His father didn't even know until the application was already submitted. Now, all Fourth could do was wait. A few days later, on a quiet afternoon, Fourth was lounging in pajamas, scrolling on his phone when Gemini walked into the bedroom wearing a grin that looked suspiciously smug. Fourth narrowed his eyes. "What did you do?" Gemini didn't answer. Instead, he held up a black silk blindfold. Fourth sat up. "No, not that. Not now." Gemini laughed. "Relax, it's not what you think. I promise this is wholesome. You're not going to lead me into a surprise wedding, are you?" "I already married you, dummy," Gemini teased, leaning in. "Now trust me." Fourth sighed dramatically. "Fine. But if this is weird, I'm suing you." "You wouldn't sue your husband," Gemini chuckled as he tied the blindfold carefully. "I'd still try," Fourth muttered. Gemini gently guided him through their apartment building, whispering, "Step here, And, careful there, as Fourth shuffled forward like a suspicious kitten. Finally, they stopped. Fourth sniffed the air. Where are we? In the parking area, Gemini said softly. If this is just a mop and a congratulations sign, I swear. Before he could finish, Gemini untied the blindfold. Fourth blinked against the light, then froze. Right in front of him stood a brand new car, sleek, red and gleaming, wrapped with a giant golden ribbon. The license plate even had a small engraving that read, "For Fourth from your favorite husband." "Gem," Fourth whispered. "Your graduation gift," Gemini said, beaming. "Do you like it?" "Like it?" Fourth's voice cracked. "You bought me a car?" "Luxury edition," Gemini nodded proudly. "Smart navigation, wireless everything, seat warmers. Safety first for my prince." Fourth stared, then launched himself into Gemini's arms. "You're the best husband in the world." "I know," Gemini teased, hugging him back. "Why are you so good to me?" "Because you make my life brighter just by being in it," Gemini said gently. Fourth laughed through his happy tears. "I thought maybe you'd get me flowers. Or a watch. But a red beast? Seriously? Want to sit inside?" Gemini grinned. "Sit? I'm going to drive this thing." Fourth shouted, running barefoot toward the driver's seat. "You don't even have shoes on." Gemini called out. "I don't care." Fourth yelled back, hopping in with house slippers. "This is my car now." Gemini could only laugh as Fourth settled behind the wheel, grinning like a child on Christmas morning. "Hop in, rich husband," Fourth said excitedly. "Let's test this out." The first few minutes were calm. "Yes. Brake, Fourth." "I am braking." "That's the accelerator." "Oops. I haven't driven in months." "Please don't get us arrested. You said you'd pay my fines if I was happy driving." "Why did I say that?" Gemini groaned, clutching the dashboard. Fourth only laughed, the sound echoing through the car. But when he suddenly stopped mid-road, turned to Gemini, and kissed him, Gemini forgot all about the near misses. "You're impossible," Gemini murmured, smiling against his lips. "And you love me," Fourth grinned back. "More than I should," Gemini replied, smiling. That night, the car was safely parked, the ribbon removed, and Fourth couldn't stop taking pictures beside it. His social media was flooded with posts like, "My husband is insane. I'm so in love. Catch me running errands like I'm in a red Ferrari. He's better than all your boyfriends combined." Gemini watched from the kitchen, smiling softly. The apartment smelled like dinner and laughter, filled with the warmth of their love. Fourth was glowing, messy hair, loud voice, and unstoppable energy. Gemini had married a storm, but he wouldn't have it any other way. As Fourth jumped on the couch beside him, leaning close with a mischievous grin, he whispered, "Wanna be my passenger again, Professor?" Gemini grinned back. "Always." And with that, they both laughed, two souls, endlessly in love, enjoying the simple chaos of their forever. Chapter 29. The days following Fourth's final exams passed in a dreamy blur. No alarms. No textbooks. Just a sunshine-filled home that smelled like pancakes in the morning and lavender candles at night. Fourth wandered around in Gemini's shirts, his hair messily tied up, stealing light kisses whenever Gemini tried to work. They were in love, loudly, softly, deeply. Gemini still had to attend the university to finalize grading and reports, but Fourth? He spent his days lounging on the couch like a spoiled prince, sending playful photos to Gemini, and napping in sunbeams while waiting for his husband to come home and hold him close. One afternoon, the door burst open. "Baby!" Gemini shouted, still wearing his white shirt and black tie, his face glowing with excitement. Fourth peeked from under the blanket. "You look way too happy. Should I be worried?" Gemini threw his bag aside and waved a printed paper dramatically. Guess who passed every subject with flying colors and received special recognition from the dean? Fourth blinked. "Me." "Yes, you." Gemini laughed, tackling him onto the couch and showering his face with kisses. "You graduated like a star." "Gemini, the paper?" "I'll frame it later," Gemini said, grinning as he hugged him tight. I'm so proud of you, my little genius. My honors graduate. My amazing husband. Fourth rolled his eyes but smiled anyway. You're such a simp. I know, Gemini said proudly. You're simp. That night, Gemini made sure it was a celebration to remember, a warm dinner, soft music, and laughter echoing through their home. When they finally went to bed, Gemini whispered against his hair, "You make me proud every single day." Graduation day arrived sooner than expected. Fourth was up before sunrise, his robe perfectly ironed, black dress shoes polished, and cheeks flushed with excitement. "You look incredible," Gemini murmured sleepily, watching from the bed as Fourth fixed his tie in the mirror. "I know," Fourth said with a grin. "Don't be late today." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Gemini said, smiling. What Fourth didn't know was that Gemini had plans far beyond just being a proud professor in the crowd. The ceremony hall buzzed with energy, flowers, camera flashes, and proud parents wiping away tears. Fourth's parents arrived first, holding the largest bouquet he'd ever seen. Then Gemini's parents arrived, just as elegant and radiant, smiling warmly as they greeted everyone. What made Fourth's heart swell was seeing both families together, his and Gemini's, chatting like they'd known each other forever. "Make sure he doesn't fall off the stage," Fourth's father joked, patting Gemini on the back. "If he does, I'll catch him," Gemini replied. Fourth's mother kissed his cheek. "You're glowing, my baby." But even as he laughed, a quiet worry lingered. None of his classmates knew about his marriage. Not the professors, not the students snapping selfies nearby. No one knew he was married to Professor Gemini Norwit. And if they ever found out, he wasn't sure how people would react. Still, he told himself, this was his day. And Gemini would simply watch from the crowd, quietly proud. The ceremony began. Degrees were handed out. Medals pinned. Applause and cheers filled the hall. Then the announcer's voice echoed. With highest honors and special recognition for academic excellence in business studies, Mr. Natawat. Applause erupted. Fourth walked onto the stage, his heart pounding with pride. Under the bright lights, he smiled, holding his certificate tightly. When the applause softened, he stepped up to the mic. "I don't know where to begin," he said, voice steady. "I want to thank my parents, my professors, my friends." He paused for a heartbeat. "And one person," he continued softly, "someone who stood by me every step of the way, who stayed up late with me to study, who believed in me more than I believed in myself." The audience chuckled softly when he added, "He knows who he is. He's the reason I'm here today, stronger, happier. I love you. Always." Polite applause followed, mixed with curious murmurs and smiles from friends who clearly hadn't expected that part. Fourth stepped back from the microphone. And then, "Wait, one more thing," a familiar voice said. It came from the crowd. Gasps rippled through the hall as Gemini walked toward the stage, still in his black shirt, sleeves rolled up, a red bouquet in hand. Fourth's eyes widened. "Gemini, what are you?" Gemini smiled gently, taking the microphone. "You didn't think I'd let you graduate without a little surprise, did you?" he said warmly. "Fourth, my student, my best friend, my sunshine, my husband." A collective gasp filled the hall. Professors exchanged glances. Students whispered. Parents blinked. "Yes, everyone," Gemini said, laughing lightly. "We're married. It's true. I married the most brilliant, brave, and loving person in this university. And I couldn't be prouder of him today." Fourth's breath caught. His eyes shimmered with tears as he dropped the folder he was holding. The hall was silent for a moment. Then someone shouted from the audience, "They're married!" Laughter broke out, followed by cheers, applause, and happy screams. Even some professors smiled and joined in. Gemini held out the bouquet. "Congratulations, my love." Fourth covered his face, laughing through his tears as he hugged him tightly. "You really told everyone," he whispered. "I don't want to hide anymore," Gemini whispered back. "I'm proud of us." The rest of the day was pure joy. Fourth's friends surrounded him after the ceremony, screaming and laughing. "You married a professor and didn't tell us? You're living in a drama," You even got a graduation car. Fourth just laughed, cheeks pink from embarrassment and happiness. Gemini stayed close beside him, arm wrapped around his waist as the cameras flashed nonstop. At one point, while Fourth was posing with his medal, Gemini suddenly lifted him into his arms. Click. That photo, Fourth laughing in midair, Gemini looking up at him with a grin, became everyone's favorite. Their parents took family photos together, eyes glowing with pride, flowers overflowing, smiles unending. That night, their apartment was filled with congratulatory bouquets, gift boxes, and balloons. Fourth stepped inside, still wearing his robe and medal, hand in Gemini's. The joy from the day still lingered like a song that wouldn't fade. Gemini locked the door behind them. Fourth turned, looking at him quietly for a moment. All the noise and celebration finally caught up with him. The relief, the pride, the love, and the fact that they didn't have to hide anymore. He stepped forward and hugged Gemini tightly, the medal clinking softly against Gemini's chest. "I love you," he whispered. Gemini smiled, wrapping his arms around him. "I love you more." They stayed like that, quiet, warm, and completely at peace. Gemini in his rolled-up professor's shirt, Fourth in his graduation robe. No longer secret, no longer hiding. Just husbands. At home. In love. Together. Chapter 30. Life was kind to them. Not perfect, not always easy, but kind. In a quiet, fulfilling way that made Fourth catch himself smiling on rainy mornings, or made Gemini slow his driving just to listen to Fourth excitedly talk about the latest drama he was watching. Fourth had landed an internship at his father's company, not because of his family name, and not because of his husband, but because he earned it. He worked hard, aced the interview, and ranked among the top students in the business department. When the acceptance email arrived, Gemini had practically lifted him off the ground in the kitchen, spinning him around until the milk carton nearly spilled. "You did it, my angel." Gemini cheered, pressing a kiss to Fourth's temple. "I'm going to send flowers to your boss every day so he never dares to scold you." Fourth laughed, trying to wriggle free. "Please don't. Let me survive the first week before you start your floral threats." Gemini winked. "Too late. I already claimed you, with a wedding ring, remember?" Weeks turned into months. Fourth quickly adjusted to work life. Every evening he came home tired but happy, collapsing on the couch with his tie half undone, complaining about endless emails, funny coworkers, and the awful coffee from the vending machine. Gemini would arrive soon after, greeting him with a gentle kiss before even taking off his shoes. They cooked dinner together, watched anime, shared playlists, and sometimes accidentally turned bath time into chaos. Like that one evening when Fourth dropped too many bath bombs and the water sparkled like glitter. Weekends were their favorite. Lazy mornings, shared breakfasts, laughter, and peace. They were in love, completely and comfortably. Fourth had been counting down to their first wedding anniversary in secret. He had a few ideas written in his notebook: a dinner, a movie night, maybe a handwritten card left on Gemini's pillow. Something simple, something heartfelt. But he never said a word about it. He wanted to see if Gemini would remember. He hoped he would. But Gemini had been so busy lately, maybe he wouldn't. So, the night before their anniversary, they sat together on the couch for dinner. Gemini in a loose gray shirt, Fourth in his pajamas. Fourth said nothing, just quietly watched Gemini eat. Then, without warning, Gemini slid an envelope across the table. "Here," he said casually. Fourth blinked. "What's this?" "Something for my favorite husband." Curious, Fourth opened the envelope and froze. Inside were 2 plane tickets. Departure, tomorrow morning. Destination, Tokyo, Japan. Tucked between their passports was a small white note, written in Gemini's familiar handwriting. "Pack up, husband." Fourth stared at the tickets, stunned. "Gemini, what is this?" "You once said you wanted to visit Japan's Disneyland," Gemini said, pretending to sip his soup calmly. "We couldn't go then, so next time is now." Fourth's throat tightened. "You remembered that?" Gemini looked at him softly. "I remember everything you say." "You got leave from the university?" 2 weeks approved. "And you asked my dad too?" Gemini chuckled. Why do you think he's been smiling so mysteriously all week? He helped me plan it. Fourth's voice cracked. You planned all this without me even noticing? Gemini's smile turned gentle. Because you always do so much, for me, for us. I wanted to do something for you too. Fourth's eyes filled with tears. Gemini, you're such an unfairly perfect husband, he said, half laughing, half crying. Gemini quickly set his bowl aside and pulled Fourth into his arms. Fourth's voice wobbled as he spoke into Gemini's shoulder. You planned everything, you even printed the tickets? I didn't even get you a gift. You are my gift, Gemini whispered warmly. Fourth sniffled, laughing through his tears. I'm going to cry on the plane tomorrow, and it's all your fault. Then I'll cry with you, Gemini replied with a grin. Honeymoon Part 2, Disney Edition. They stayed like that for a long while, wrapped in each other's arms under the soft glow of their apartment lights, the plane tickets resting on the table beside them. By 11:59 p.m., Fourth was still bustling around their closet, packing shirts and essentials into their matching suitcases from their Bali trip. Should I bring light jackets? It's still summer, right? Wait, did we even exchange currency? What if we? Before he could finish, a pair of familiar arms circled his waist from behind. Gemini's voice was low and tender. Happy anniversary, baby. The clock struck midnight. Fourth immediately relaxed into his embrace. They stood there surrounded by half-folded clothes, open bags, and mismatched socks scattered on the floor. Gemini held him closer and whispered, You've made this the happiest year of my life. Fourth turned in his arms, eyes shining. I love you, he said softly. Gemini smiled and pressed a kiss to his forehead. I love you more. They stayed like that, holding each other, laughing quietly, hearts full, while the world outside slept. Soon, they'd be off to a new adventure. But that night, in their little apartment, surrounded by warmth and love, it already felt like the perfect anniversary. Gemini in his soft gray shirt. Fourth in his rumpled pajamas. No secrets. No distance. Just two people, deeply in love, ready to see the world together. Chapter 31. A Tokyo Adventure, Gemini and Fourth's Anniversary Trip. It started, predictably, with chaos. I'm just saying, Fourth mumbled through a mouthful of rice. Japanese airport onigiri hits different. One more. Just one more. Gemini looked seconds away from losing patience as he watched his younger husband hopping in line at the convenience store, with only 15 minutes left before boarding. You said that after your second one, Gemini sighed. It's been 5. I'm growing, Fourth replied, already reaching for 2 more salmon mayo rice balls and a strawberry milk. You're growing sideways, Gemini muttered. Fourth just grinned. Love you too, husband. He skipped back and offered a bite, eyes twinkling. Gemini leaned down, took a reluctant bite, and said while rushing toward the gate, If we miss this flight because of you. We won't, Fourth interrupted cheerfully. Because my responsible professor husband already checked us in online. You're an adult too, Gemini pointed out. Yeah, but you're adult Pro Max, Fourth teased. Gemini narrowed his eyes but didn't argue. They made it, barely. Panting, giggling, bags shoved into the overhead compartment, Gemini's ties slightly crooked from all the rushing. Congratulations, Gemini said once they sat down. You've already made this trip a mess. Fourth leaned over and kissed his cheek. It's our mess. And like always, Gemini melted. They landed in Tokyo early in the morning. Fourth was practically glowing with excitement the moment the plane touched down. Did you sleep at all? Gemini asked as they waited for their luggage. Not a wink. Fourth grinned. Too excited. You'll crash halfway through Disneyland, Gemini warned. No way. I've trained for this. By eating airport snacks? Same thing, Fourth shrugged, eyes sparkling. Gemini chuckled. He was already smiling more than usual, and it was only day 1. Disneyland Tokyo was everything Fourth had imagined and more. The first thing he did was run into a gift shop and grab matching Mickey Mouse ears. You have to wear them, he said, practically bouncing. Gemini raised an eyebrow. Do I? This husband clause. Anniversary trip. Fine Prince says you must obey the brat on all theme park visits. Gemini laughed and put them on without complaint. So now, with his tall, composed frame, he still insisted on wearing a dress shirt and serious expression topped by Mickey ears. Professor Gemini Norowit walked hand in hand with his energetic younger husband through Tokyo Disneyland. He looked like a hired bodyguard for a Disney prince, but a very in-love one. They started with calmer rides. It's a small world, haunted mansion, where Fourth clung to Gemini's arm at every turn, even when he wasn't scared. Did you get frightened? Gemini teased as they stepped off. No, Fourth replied, leaning on him. You're just warm. Gemini's ears were redder than his Mickey ones. Then came the roller coasters. You hate these, don't you? Fourth smirked as they approached Space Mountain. Gemini eyed the sign warily. With passion. I'll make it worth your while, Fourth teased. Gemini sighed. Fine. Front seat, my prince. Fourth squealed and dragged him along. Their ride photo? Gemini gripping the handles like his life depended on it, while Fourth had his arms raised in pure joy. Gemini bought a printed copy. I'm framing this for our living room. You wouldn't dare, Fourth gasped. Gemini smirked. Try me. Lunch was just as chaotic. They shared a Mickey-shaped bento, bought popcorn in alien buckets, and devoured sweets like kids. Try this, Fourth said, holding up a green alien mochi. Gemini let him feed it to him. Not bad. You like aliens, huh? Fourth teased. Gemini smiled softly. Only this one. Fourth blushed so hard he shoved another mochi into his mouth to hide his grin. As the afternoon parade began, Fourth filmed everything, waving at the floats, eyes shining with childlike wonder. Gemini didn't even look at the parade. He just watched Fourth, the way his eyes lit up, his laughter echoing through the crowd. You're staring, Fourth whispered, glancing up. Gemini leaned close. You're magic. Fourth blinked rapidly, trying not to tear up. Stop before I cry in Disneyland, idiot. Later, when Fourth complained about the long line for Pirates of the Caribbean, Gemini just kissed the back of his hand. That shut him up quickly. When the ride began, Fourth leaned into his husband's side. Gemini's arm found its familiar place around his waist. By evening, the sky turned golden over Cinderella's castle. They found a quiet spot near a flower garden, fairy lights beginning to twinkle around them. I want to live here, Fourth sighed, lying on the grass. We have rent and bills, Gemini replied, lying beside him. We can fake our deaths and run away. Tempting. Still no. Fourth laughed, then turned to rest his chin on Gemini's chest. You're happy? Gemini looked at him gently. I haven't been this happy since the day you said, I do. Fourth blushed and hid his face. You say the cheesiest things. Because I married the most adorable brat alive. Fourth flicked his chest playfully. Gemini caught his hand and kissed his fingers. When night fell, fireworks painted the sky above the castle. Fourth stood close beside Gemini, both of them still wearing their Mickey ears, hands intertwined. The air smelled of sugar and fireworks, the music swelling as color filled the sky. Fourth tilted his head up and kissed Gemini softly. You're the best husband ever. Gemini smiled. You made me want to be. They returned to their hotel with arms full of plushies, keychains, and souvenir bags, Fourth proudly carrying a Donald Duck backpack. In the taxi, Gemini leaned over and kissed his cheek. Watching you have fun might be my new favorite hobby. Fourth grinned. You're so whipped. I know, Gemini admitted, smiling. When they finally reached their room, both exhausted and laughing, Gemini pulled Fourth into his arms. 1 year of marriage already, he murmured. Crazy, right? Fourth giggled. Crazy in love, Gemini replied. They kissed once more, soft and full of warmth, before collapsing onto the bed surrounded by their plushies, still wearing their Mickey ears. Their first Disney day was over. But their forever adventure had only just begun. Chapter 32. The next morning, Tokyo was bathed in soft sunlight, yet inside their hotel room, peace lingered. Gemini was the first to wake. He turned his head and smiled at the sight beside him. Fourth, half buried in a pillow, arms stretched out like a sleepy starfish, his hair a complete mess after their long day at Disneyland. Gemini chuckled quietly and brushed a few strands away from his face. "Still tired, baby?" A sleepy mumble came from the pillow. "Too much, Mickey Mouse?" Gemini laughed under his breath. "Let's do something slower today." That afternoon, they took the train to Kyoto. The ride hummed softly, the scenery shifting from tall city towers to quiet fields and blooming trees. Cherry blossoms framed the sky outside the window like something out of a painting. Fourth leaned against Gemini's shoulder, his fingers lightly curled around his arm, eyes fluttering with drowsy happiness. When they arrived at the ryokan, a traditional inn surrounded by forest mist and mountain air, Fourth's jaw dropped in awe. "This is unreal," he whispered. Gemini smiled, unlocking the door to their room. "You deserve unreal." Inside, the wooden floors gleamed softly under the light of paper lanterns. A table was set with 2 cups of steaming green tea. The air smelled faintly of cedar and herbs. Fourth spun around playfully. "I feel like a prince in an old drama." "You look like one too," Gemini replied, amused. That evening, they changed into soft yukata robes in shades of navy and white. Dinner was a traditional kaiseki meal, delicate tofu, grilled eel, miso soup, and colorful side dishes that looked too pretty to eat. Fourth tried every single dish with delight, his face lighting up after each bite. Gemini, on the other hand, barely tasted his food. He was too busy watching Fourth's joy. "You're staring again," Fourth said with a bashful smile. "You're too beautiful not to," Gemini replied simply. Later that night, the sky above Kyoto shimmered with countless stars. The full moon hung quietly above the forest. Their private hot spring bath steamed under the open sky, surrounded by smooth stones and soft lantern light. Gemini eased into the warm water first, sighing at the soothing heat. Fourth joined soon after, resting beside him with a peaceful hum. "This feels like heaven," Fourth whispered. "It really does," Gemini said, draping an arm around him. For a long while, they said nothing. They simply sat together in the steaming water, listening to the soft ripples and the distant sound of cicadas. Gemini rested his chin on Fourth's shoulder. "Can you believe it's been a year already?" Fourth smiled. "Feels like yesterday and forever at the same time." He turned his head slightly to meet Gemini's gaze. There, in the soft light, the world seemed to slow down. Gemini brushed his thumb along Fourth's cheek, and Fourth's eyes softened. "Thank you," Fourth whispered. "For what?" "For always making life feel like something worth remembering." Gemini smiled. "That's easy when you're beside me." They stayed in each other's arms, breathing in the warmth and peace of that moment until the water began to cool and the stars glimmered faintly through the mist. Back inside their room, they dried their hair and changed into fresh robes. The air smelled faintly of green tea and cedarwood. Gemini looked over and saw Fourth standing near the sliding door, looking out at the moonlight spilling across the tatami floor. His expression was calm, touched with quiet happiness. Gemini walked up behind him, wrapping his arms gently around his waist. Fourth leaned into the embrace, smiling. "You really planned everything perfectly." "I just wanted to see you smile like this," Gemini said softly. Fourth turned in his arms, eyes meeting his. "You always do." Gemini brushed a kiss against his forehead, then rested his head against Fourth's. The world outside was silent, but inside their small room, warmth filled every corner. They talked for hours, about dreams, work, and all the small things they loved about each other. Laughter came easily. So did silence. At one point, Fourth whispered, "I don't ever want this trip to end." Gemini's answer was simple. "Then let's keep making new ones." When dawn came, they were still asleep side by side, the sunlight slipping gently across their futon. Gemini stirred first and smiled at the sight of Fourth breathing softly beside him. No words were needed, no grand gestures. Just the quiet comfort of knowing they were exactly where they were meant to be, together. Under the same morning light in Japan, 2 hearts found peace in each other's presence, proof that love doesn't always need noise to be extraordinary. Sometimes, it only needs a quiet moment, shared between two people who never stopped choosing each other. 3 years later, their apartment hadn't changed much. The soft beige walls were still there, the air still smelled faintly of lavender and Gemini's coffee, and the same small dent on the kitchen cabinet remained. A souvenir from the night Forth accidentally hit it with a champagne bottle after getting promoted. But now, the quiet home had two very lively additions. Machi, don't eat that. A blur of white fluff darted across the living room, a feather toy in its mouth, while Forth chased after it in mismatched socks and a loose tank top. Gemini looked up from his laptop at the dining table, setting his coffee down just as the second furball, Yuki, the sassier one, leapt onto the table, knocking over a pen holder. Yuki, Gemini said calmly, catching it mid-fall. I'll trade you for silence. The cat meowed back as if to argue. Gemini, Forth called out, half out of breath. Your daughter is chewing our tax papers, and your son just jumped on my leg. Gemini stood up, walked over with his usual calmness, and kissed Forth's cheek. Correction. Our daughter and son. And you were the one who insisted we adopt them. You carried them to the car. You cried first. I was overwhelmed by their tiny paws. Gemini laughed, picking up Machi, who now dangled a piece of shredded paper like a trophy. You two are driving your papa crazy, he murmured, cuddling both cats in his arms. Just like your other papa. Forth flopped onto the couch with a dramatic sigh. I used to be hot and mysterious. You still are, Gemini replied smoothly, sitting beside him as the cats climbed into their laps. You're just a hot, mysterious cat dad now, one who can't walk through the house without tripping over tails. Forth narrowed his eyes. Your sarcasm is showing, Mr. Husband. So is your shoulder, Gemini teased, tugging gently on the strap of his tank top before pressing a kiss there. Forth turned red instantly. You're impossible. Gemini smiled. You love me anyway. Life had fallen into a gentle rhythm over the past few years. Forth was now the director of branding and international affairs at his father's company, not because of family ties, but because of his creativity, determination, and boldness that even senior executives respected. Gemini remained a well-loved business professor at the university, often invited to lecture abroad. Students admired his intelligence and calm confidence, though everyone knew he only ever smiled like that when his husband's name appeared on his phone. Their world was fuller now, busier, yes, but brighter too. Between the chaos of work and their fur babies, they still found their way back to each other every day. No matter what. That evening was as delightfully messy as usual. Dinner consisted of burnt rice and takeout sushi. Yuki sat regally on the table while Machi tried to bury the soy sauce. Forth wore Gemini's oversized shirt as he licked a bit of wasabi off his thumb. You know, he said thoughtfully, if you told me when I was 21 that I'd be eating fancy sushi with 2 cats while my husband checks expense charts, I'd say you were crazy. Without looking up, Gemini replied, you still flirted with your professor. I was brave. You were a handful. You married the handful, Forth teased. Gemini finally looked up, his expression softening. Best decision of my life. Forth froze for a moment, his chest tightening. Then he stood, walked behind Gemini, and wrapped his arms around him from behind, resting his cheek on Gemini's shoulder. Still feel that way? He whispered. Gemini turned his head and kissed him gently. Every single day. Later, their bedroom was its usual brand of disaster. Unfolded laundry, one sock hanging from the lamp, Yuki curled up in Forth's underwear drawer, and Machi comfortably sleeping on Gemini's pillow. Forth came out of the bathroom in fuzzy bunny pajama pants and said, we should get married again. Gemini blinked from his spot on the bed, smiling in quiet amusement. We're already married. I mean, a big ceremony this time. Destination wedding. With cat-themed invitations. Gemini chuckled. That's ridiculous. You'd still say yes though, Forth said with a grin. Gemini stood, crossed the room, and gently cornered him by the wall. You think I wouldn't marry you again, even in a cat onesie in a Hello Kitty chapel, if you asked? Forth laughed, blushing. You're unbelievable. Gemini nuzzled his hair affectionately. Then it settled. We'll marry again. As long as I get to see you tear up during the vows. I did not cry. You did. You said I was the reason you believe in fate. I must have blacked out. That doesn't count. Gemini pressed a kiss to his cheek. It counts to me. That night, they lay tangled together in bed, cats nestled between them like soft pillows. Fourth rested his head on Gemini's chest. You happy, Professor? Gemini stroked his hair gently. With you? Always. What if we adopt a dog next? Gemini groaned. You're trying to kill me. Fourth giggled. You'll survive. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the steady rhythm of their breathing. Gemini whispered, You know, this is our little kingdom. Fourth murmured sleepily, Do me, the chaos, the fur, the mismatched mugs, the forgotten laundry. It's messy, it's loud, but it's ours. Fourth opened his eyes slightly, smiled, and whispered, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And as the night settled around them, two cats purring, hearts at peace, Gemini tightened his arms around the love of his life. Their home wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.